Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm getting better and better at this. It's
are.
only taken me about 4 months to get to a point where I feel like these kind of work. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Guest Thursday. We have another great guest with us. And it's funny because Lori and I actually have a peripheral long history together and a much more important short history together. So please join us in welcoming Lori Abbott to Guest Thursday on Daily Dose.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so excited that you're here. So, Lori, let's just get this out of the way. You and I grew up in the same town. We both grew up in Wapaton, but we didn't really know each other because, you know, when you're little, a year or two can make a huge difference in terms of who you know. You know, if you're
Absolutely.
10 and I'm 8, you're not playing with an 8-year-old. So we don't really have a past history together, but you had my dad as a teacher and all the kinds of things that happen in a small town. But more importantly, Lori just January 1st through the 3rd joined a number of other women with me to take a personal systems disruption retreat, which was just a great way to get to know you in your adult form, because now who cares how old we are?
Right, exactly. I mean, you're still younger than I am, and that's okay. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it.
So I said in the written text introducing you today, Lori, I said that we're here to talk about your journey to sobriety, solo traveling, and writing. So the reason I brought up solo traveling is because Lori did something pretty cool in addition to taking that retreat with me. Lori, tell people what you did to usher in 2021 and to sort of shake off 2020.
Well, it was sort of what I did all of dealing with 2020, as I decided that since my love of international traveling was put on hold, that I was going to make the best of it. And every weekend I went out adventuring within 2 hours of my front door. Stayed in all kinds of really cool Airbnbs, hiked, ran. I mean, and there's not a national park or state park within the vicinity of 2 hours of my front door that my dog and I have not gone to. New Year's was no exception. There's no way I could end 2020 and then embark in 2021 without a travel adventure. So I decided I love South Dakota. So I went to Deadwood, Spearfish, enjoyed the mountain air, and had one hell of a great sober entering to a new year.
Yeah, it was
And
very cool.
The retreat that we did was absolutely fabulous. It's so what my soul needed, and the fact that I made it work while being on the road was beautiful.
It was pretty remarkable. We only lost you when you sort of ended up on a road that was under construction near a reservation that wouldn't let you go through. And so we lost you for just a pretty brief period of time, which was amazing because our boy went to college in Rapid City. And so I know exactly where those drop zones are on every road between here and Rapid City.
I did not know ahead of time that the state of South Dakota, when on tribal property, which I have the utmost respect for, would not, due to COVID numbers, let me and my little pug travel across state lines. So I had to backtrack to Rapid City, and yes, in that spot where the GPS doesn't work and I have no idea where I'm at. So,
yes.
Hey.
That's
it added to the adventure. That's
absolutely it did. Absolutely. Well, Lori, we always start with the first question, which is really just tell us about how you got from wherever you want to start to today, which is you being sober.
Sure. I guess maybe the easiest thing is to give a brief recap of sort of the last maybe 7-8 years of my life. I was a girl who fell madly in love with a boy who was a meth and heroin addict and alcoholic. And it ended very tragically for me. We'll leave it at that for 8:30 in the morning. The last 5 years, I have been healing from that trauma, and a part of healing from that trauma, I discovered that in order to be my best version of myself, I needed to show up in this world as a sober woman. So here I am. That's sort of the long and the short, with a whole lot of really important pieces missing. So you can let me know what you'd like me to fill in.
Well, okay, so that's a great segue to this third piece. So we've talked about your solo traveling, we've talked about your quick path to sobriety. The third piece is writing, because you're working on
Yes, I'm working on what I call a labor of love. I am being called by powers higher than myself to make use of my situation, the things that I went through. So I am writing a book about my long-term relationship with a drug addict, the trauma healing that I did as a result of an event of our relationship not quite ending how anyone would really expect it to. And in the midst of writing this book, as I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to put a profound piece of literature out into the world to help people. This is not a book about poor little Lori and big bad X that was the drug addict, right? It's about shedding light on the seriousness of addiction, the lack of resources that we have in this world, especially for couples like yourself who are working through addiction together. If you haven't been in your shoes, you don't have a clue. And as I'm writing this, I am dealing in the back of my mind with this lingering thought where, Lori, you've got an issue with alcohol, right? Like you use and abuse alcohol. Your party girl image was really cute when you were 20. It was halfway cute when you're 30. When you're 40 and slipping off a bar stool, sweetheart, you're not cute anymore. Or, you need to take a look at that with some curiosity. And I also am thinking, how unauthentic am I to be writing a book about addiction and trauma recovery and helping people if I can't stay sober when I know I need to? That's not the message in that book is not going to come out into the world the way that my heart wants and needs it to do. So in 2019, I started getting really curious about my drinking habits. I read a fantastic book by Annie Grace called The Alcohol Experiment, and tried the first 30 days of it or so half-assed. I'd read the exercises, I'd look at it, I'd jot some things down. I'd go 30 days without drinking and then decide, well, there's a chapter in this book that says it's okay to go ahead and experiment with alcohol, but, make some notes about it, or better yet, record yourself and learn from it. So I'm like, oh, sweet, there's an opening, right? Annie Grace, this great book, it's been helping people around the world. She tells me it's okay that I can go out one night and drink, even though I know I shouldn't. So I did. And I found myself, I think it was, hello?
We're here.
Oh, for some reason I'm logged off. Oh, are you there? Sorry.
We're here. Can you hear us?
So I found myself in November of 2019 writing on a little note, napkin in a bar about how crappy I feel about drinking, that I shouldn't be drinking, that I don't like this feeling. And I looked at it the next morning and said, I'm done.
Oh,
And
wow.
so have not had a drop of alcohol since some random day in December of 2019.
Wow. Congratulations, first of all, Lori. We're letting the dog out.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So you use a word that I find so interesting because it's so different from our experience. You say you started to get really curious about your drinking.
Yes.
So can you, what tipped you off, or what allowed you, maybe this is a better question, and you confirm or deny this. I think Maz knew he had a drinking problem, but he was afraid to even be honest with himself.
Yes.
So he never allowed himself to get curious about his drinking habits, because to get curious is to open that door. So how do you suppose you reached that point where you were willing to be that honest with yourself?
It wasn't the first time that I took this approach at something. This was just my first approach about getting curious about alcohol. I've been curious about how I can heal from the trauma, how I got curious about how I can live with having PTSD every single day and still live my very best life. I just carry it around in my back pocket with me. So that concept for me was not new. It's just I took that concept and applied it to alcohol. And for me, it worked. It may not work for somebody else. My drinking was not at a point where anyone really on the outside would know that there was a problem. I'm a social drinker, clearly learned that being a social drinker does not mean you don't have a problem with it. I could always take it or leave it. I could quit for periods of time on my own without even giving it any thought. But what came down to it and what really triggered it is I went through a food allergy testing. And in the food allergy testing sheet, it spit out 300 and some foods, and it tells you which ones you are like highly sensitive to. Well, every good ingredient in a beer was on this list of things for me, right? And my eyes, I'm sitting there with my naturopathic doctor, and I'm like, I should have been concerned about the fact that basically every healthy food I was eating, I also had a sensitivity to, but my brain didn't seem to care about cheese. It only cared about me piecing together this list of other things and saying, I can't drink beer.
Oh.
And I went home and I sat down with myself and my dog, and I'm like, well, what the hell? Should I not be more concerned about the food?
It's a fair question.
I don't know
For
why.
real though, you know what I mean? So, and I think in part because of who I am, what I've done for a living my whole entire life, curiosity is just something that is ingrained within me. So, I mean, yeah, there was a series of things like that that said, okay, you need to start taking a look at this.
Well, I really love how clear you are on sort of some of those moments, because I think this is, I say so often, a lot of what we talk about is not the purview of those who are addicted to substances. It's really the purview of being alive. And for most of us, we kind of go through life afraid to address the kinds of things that are holding us up, whether they are something we're ingesting or something that we feel about ourselves, or it doesn't really matter. It's scary to confront that. And we're so unconscious through most of our lives that it's hard to even be able to say, boy, in this moment, I knew I was standing at a fork in the road and I had a choice to make.
Exactly. And, in all honesty, had I not been spending the last 5 years of my life getting curious and a lot of self-reflection and a hell of a lot of work and healing, I probably wouldn't have been as open to this than had I not already been doing some of this work beforehand.
Sure.
In all honesty,
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's not been easy. It's not as simple of reading a book. It wasn't as simple as I decided that was it. I mean, I did decide that that was it, but I mean, it's still trouble. I mean, it's still work. It's still hard. But the way I feel now, no taste of alcohol could ever come close to how flippin' amazing I feel right now.
Yeah, I know that feeling. Actually, I was thinking about that thing, something similar to that, just the other day. People have always asked me, do you think you can go back to drinking? I thought, hey, who wants to find out? I'm good.
Right.
This is the healthiest and happiest I've been in, 4 years and 3 days. So why go backwards?
Right. And people ask me that all the time, and I'm sure it's probably true for you. I've asked myself that same question, right? Because there are days when you think to yourself, do I really have to, admit that I can never do this one thing? And for me, I don't like rules. I don't like being told what I can and cannot do. Again, a side effect of being a lawyer for 23 years, it's, it helps. It's a good quality to have in your professional life, but not necessarily in your personal life, right? But yeah, there is right now, and I think that's the important part too, is I don't know how I'm going to feel a year from now. I don't know how I'm going to feel next week. I can tell you right now, it's not even in the realm of something I would even consider under any circumstances. Why? Why do I want to go back over everything over again? No, thanks. The world is waiting for a lot more important things than that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really love. Okay, so you're working on this book. How
Yes.
far along are you?
Have either of you ever read the book Bird by Bird?
I just read it last week.
Right. Well, I say bird, I insert an adjective that rhymes with duck and then bird. So there's the process of it. I am in the midst of a writing competition with Hay House Publishing. I have got to have my proposals sent off by April 19th. Right now I'm writing the hard chapter. It's about the actual event that happened between my ex and I in a hotel room. It was 5 years ago this September. So it's the worst part of the book for me, the one I've been challenging myself to really follow through with every day. But when that's done, I think it's going to be clear sailing. The book will be submitted to the proposal because there's no choice. It will be done one way or another.
Hard deadlines are blessings and curses for sure.
Right. Well, there's an interesting fact. I'm not a writer. Okay. So it's not, I don't really like it. I'm not skilled at it. I'm more of an, a talker. I'm not a writer. So I have to be realistic. This book needs to get out into the world because it's going to help people. And the only realistic way that's going to happen for me to get a book published by a publishing company with, no platform and no real writing skills is I need to win this competition.
Right.
So I'm going to.
Yeah, it's amazing. I can't wait to follow up with you and share with the audience. I just, I'm not interested in giving your story away, but it is important for our audience to understand that this event that Lori's referencing, you almost died.
That is correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a serious arc to this story that certainly transcends like our story. I never was threatened. I mean, you did almost die, but not from a physical assault. So it's just your story.
Right.
The pieces that I know of it are, the kind of stuff that you see about in like 2020 or those sorts of things.
Right.
So you're right. You do need to tell this story because I think if for no other reason than you are a successful, accomplished, highly educated, professional woman who still found herself in this situation. And one of the things that we talk so often about is addiction doesn't care how educated you are, what color you are, where you're from, what your gender is, how old you are, if you've got a good job or if you're living on the streets. Addiction could care less. And I think that is some of why our story matters, because between the three of us, we have 6 degrees. Yeah. There's no reason for this to have happened, and yet it did. And I think the same perhaps could be said of you.
Oh, without a doubt. And I mean, especially in my circumstance, and I think I shared a little this about the retreat. I mean, what I'll say about the event that happened is my ex in the book is being referred to as Romeo. If that gives you any insight, the event was a Romeo and Juliet-esque sort of thing. It wasn't a act of hitting or extreme violence. It was much more psychologically dangerous and severe. So that just to be candid, that's the nature of the event, and the details will all be there. They're raw and emotional and ugly, and the single most painful thing I've ever had to put down on a piece of paper is the details of what happened in that hotel room. But yeah, there's no other point. You need to own your stories. We need to own our stories. And yes, no degree or level of education or work experience. I used to work, I volunteered for many, many, many years when I was in private practice in the cities at the Harriet Tubman Center, right? I'm working with women, these women that came in on their 3rd, 4th order for protection. And I'm thinking to myself, how are you women finding yourselves in this kind of relationship over and over again? How are you here for the third restraining order against the same person?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? You were a girl who fell in love with a boy just like me. And here we all are. So I think hopefully it'll help those who like to live in the ivory tower look down on the rest of the world thinking, how can something like that happen? It would never happen to me. The fall down from an ivory tower is going to hurt a lot more than the fall from those of us with our feet planted in the ground.
Yeah.
Boy, is that ever true and well said, Lori. So write that down, because somewhere in your book that sentence should show up. It's a great sentence.
It is a good.
You
sentence.
might be a
Powerful,
writer.
I'd say.
You might be a writer.
Yeah, there's a few things I've put down and I've gone back to read, which is not what you're supposed to be doing when you're writing your first draft. But it, like I said, this isn't just writing a book. This is like reliving a nightmare. And yeah, there's a few things I caught myself off guard with, and I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty profound. Someone might need to hear that. So here we go, right again.
Well, there's no question that all kinds of people need to hear this story, Lori. And so it's just a matter of time before it gets out in your written form. But we so appreciate you coming on and sharing a piece of it with us today. And I'm just I'm so proud of you for figuring this out of your own accord, that you don't have to stay mired. You can go on and celebrate and live an amazing life and take all of those challenges and use them to save other people who do not have the personal wherewithal to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's my mission. And I happened across you too. And I'll just tell you this real briefly, is I remember a couple of years ago, I don't know how you started coming out with your story, but I want to say that I got a portion of like a series of something that the two of you were doing.
It was a year ago tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, and it brought me to tears. It was a trauma trigger for me. And so it got filed with something that I file away when something registers in my soul, but I'm not prepared to deal with it. And I put it aside into, I need to follow back up with this when my soul is ready to hear what they have to say. And here we are today. And I just have goosebumps from that. I think the two of you sharing and coming on and doing all this is just beautiful. And if no one's ever told you that, I just have I'm overwhelmed with gratitude and admiration for what the two of you do every single day.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Lori. That's amazing.
Very kind of you.
So we're going to check in with you after you get that proposal submitted. And then we're going to check in, because here's what I'm going to say to you. If you don't win, which I think you will, but if you don't, then it's because the next opportunity is even better. It's a bigger opportunity to get your work out into the world. So you're kind of stuck with us now as we follow this journey and see where it takes.
Oh, I am honored to be stuck with you. And I was thinking this morning, I hope that in the future sometime that we could do some collaboration together. I would love to see a daily dose of Dana and Dr. Mary being interviewed themselves about this component of how you keep a relationship intact through this journey, because there are so many aspects that if you haven't been there, you don't have a clue.
Yeah.
And
that is so true.
That is a critical message that needs to get put out into the world, because if we can help just one other couple going through it, like I will never be doing what you're doing with my ex, but hopefully in a different kind of situation. So I would be honored, and I hope that we are able to do that in the future.
Good. We'll make it happen.
That's fantastic.
Yay.
Have a great Thursday, Lori.
Yes, have a
Thank
great
you
day.
so
Thank you.
much for sharing with us. Everybody else,
Thank you.
we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.